Daydreaming with Keats, A Philosopher Poet's Tale Part 3. As the deity thus fell to indignity, my breast overflowed with his deep distress, from my mouth a soft intonation exhaled. Do not from your grief so escape. Immortal anguish have you suffered and will suffer. Do not compound your children's death by self-consuming pity, for nothing shall be solved therein. There is blood about your lips, but it is yours as much as theirs. Thirst not for more. Seek out thy destiny. Fear it not, though destruction it shall find. Saturn, this you know, this is your ever-seen path. Fear it not. My voice penetrated the silver-embalmed ears of the god who lifted his head by degrees at each accusation, to look upon me with his galaxy-filled eyes. From his stare I could not drag my gaze, for though his countless years of forgetfulness had somehow sharpened the pain he felt now, that gave me strength to encompass this being's overfull conscience, and draw it to my mortal nexus, giving it shape and reality, giving a tangible dimension to this undying creature's failure. And through this bond one also gained sustenance and power which reverberated through me, surging within every nerve and sinew of my being. Saturn suddenly rose, and cried ecstatically, O mortal splendor, I had forgot thy finite joy! Let us, Nemesone, find my brothers. We seek for the end, the boundary of my boundless existence. Come! As Saturn tore his eyes from mine, I fell down into a dead faint, as if I had been consumed from within. But as Moneta touched my arm, I awoke as if reborn, an eternity of elation burning within me. We stood now in a cave where at first I could perceive nothing. Then gradually a sound of whispered conversation came to me. There were many voices speaking, not at once, but in turn, discussing a matter obviously often discussed before, for each spoke with a rehearsed tenor in their words, which were as eternal as the rocks that entombed us. I could not understand the language in any everyday sense of the word, but each voice carried with it an implication of some facet of our sensual existence. First then I heard, and saw, the sea. The heaving inevitable mass of our own personal infinity. Before me in a voice talking, I knew, of Saturn and the Titans, of the past days of glory. So it was that in words that none can read or write, I was deeply touched and moved, lashed by the foam and froth of the beach sighings that the god unionized. I felt great sympathy for this power with no power, but saw also in these words the early days of the sea, before Atlantis, before pollution. I wept, sobbing racked me, the guilt that I had carried so willingly struck me to my knees. Through my tears I then heard a different voice, and there was a sadness here also, but a grief less lofty in its aspect. The voice was as fair as an early spring day and as refreshing as an April shower, and flowing through it was an almost human lament, the freely felt loss of an ever-continuing vision to a newly blind person it seemed, though without the enhanced keenness of smell, hearing and touch that such a handicap might engender. The sense of sadness that I encountered here made an impact upon me that was total in its compass. I looked about and was aware of all these gods and their terrible aspect, and saw at once whence it arose. I turned to Moneta, who stood still by my side as mesmerized by the vision as I had been. Do not be fooled by these creatures, for they have in many guises come before many before, and they do not have existence of their own. They are here because of people such as you and I, they bear witness to our supreme folly, our extreme vanity. And there was at this moment a tumult and storm that cowered me to the ground and consumed all of me whole, but I knew of it, and it was of me, a ragged edge of my guilt, a solid tempest of dreaming reality. I let this mountainous mass of infinite energy consume me, for in knowing it had no end I had given it bounds, and knowing it had no beginning I had strained it of all existence. And thus I stood in another cave, though not boundless in aspect but walled close, and there in the corner sat a jaundiced figure. He had been racked and disposed of by some disease many years before my birth, though strangely a fever was still upon him. And I crawled as best I could to his side, for I wished to give him aid, to free him of his fanatic dream. Although I knew his name, I could not use it, and I choked as I spoke. Hello, you have traveled this path before, I feel. There was no answer, and though I knew he could not talk to me, this somehow surprised me. But his gestures contained words enough. He looked into my eyes with the full gaze that only the dead can employ, and therein was the godland I had in this dream, his dream, just passed through. His eyes held no recrimination, just an all-pervading acceptance of things as they are, as they were, as they will be. The whole of his being held the key that I was in search of, and he was not about to yield it to me. This much was clear, and this was contained within the many-faceted crystal of his gaze that made any singular interpretation impossible. This it was certain was the end of my quest. "So you have found him!" I leapt to my feet, banging my head on the cave roof as I did so. Surprise had again undone me. There stood Moneta, now wearing the garb of a ragged witch, pointed hat and all. But her voice was as it had ever been. It was a magnet which I could not but pursue. "I thought he was gone from my immortal soul, and you sought and discovered him with such ease. I have just returned from Apollo's stream, where I thought you may have gone. But you are, as you said, a dreamer. You know nothing of our eternal plight. But do not think this frees you of your obligation. You elected of your own volition to take this path, and do so you must. He will not aid you. His image is of your own making, and the path he trod you did not tread, you merely followed the sign, and read it as your kind does. Remember, each of us has a way which is born of contingency, you have stated it many a time. Listen to your own voice.